Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining us in person and whoever is joining us online. Today's event brought to you by MIpreneur is called Success Stories Over Lunch, featuring Cameo King and Lillian Werbin. Today, we're going to have a talk show style event where these two dynamic women in business are going to be telling us about their journey as successful entrepreneurs and business owners in Michigan. Elderly Instruments, where Lillian Werbin is the CEO and co-owner, is a family-owned business located right here in Lansing, Michigan. She has had remarkable success being named America's top small business for 2023 by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Among the 2024 awardees of the Michigan 50 Companies to Watch Award by Michigan Celebrate Small Business. Lillian is the second generation owner and will share her journey, challenges, and triumphs in running a successful small business in Michigan. Cameo King is the founder of Glam Guts. She is a global leader who advocates for girls and women to show up authentic and whole at home, on the job, and in the community. She is also the host of, help me, The Good Girl Podcast. I almost said Grit, Glam, and Guts again, so I had to get it out my head. She's the host of the Good Girl Podcast, and she's going to be facilitating this discussion today. So I'm going to hand the mic over to Cameo, and we're going to sit back and enjoy.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here and to have this conversation with you. I'm glad everyone is joining us to talk about success, literally over lunch. Thankful to MIpreneur as well as the Lansing Chamber of Commerce for inviting us to, I think, dine on wisdom.
Ooh, I like that.
Dine on wisdom. And reading a little bit about you, I am marveled and excited and inspired by your story.
Sheesh, thank you.
But before we start, so people can really know who you are and who's in the room, can you tell us just a little bit about that huge award that you all got? 2023 top business and small business in the United States of America. That's huge.
It is. There were 15,000 applicants, and our application was the one that made it to the final. I went to DC to meet all of these other businesses and accept the award, which at the time I did not know we were winning. And it was just a surreal experience. Still kind of is, but it was a testament to the hard work that my staff puts out every day and all of our former employees and a lot of the work that my dad did to set us up with a good foundation. So big honor, big honor.
Huge. 1 out of 15,000.
Yes, it's a big honor.
And so, again, and I think it's important to talk exactly about what you do and what Elderly Instruments is. And the passion behind it. We know that it is a family business.
Yes.
But I feel like it's different if you grow up and you see your parents doing something. You're like, I don't want to do that, you know?
It's funny. I didn't have much interaction with the business growing up. It was something that, like, I went and visited. I would get my dad and then we would leave. But I grew up going to the Christmas parties and the summer parties and weddings and birthday parties, and like the staff is an extension of my family. And I know some people say that and they don't mean it, but I really do mean it. So my dad started the business in 1972 with his partner at the time, and they grew it from an 8 by 10 to 36,000 square feet.
In 1972.
Well, in the 80s is when they moved to where we are now. But in the 70s, we were over in East Lansing in a really small spot, just the two of them to start. And we were just vintage instruments. And over the years, we added new instruments. We started shipping worldwide in 1975. And so it's this kind of grassroots organic growth that we've done. And that's kind of what I wanted to continue on, is staying true to who we are so that the growth is maintained. So that's a little bit about it, a little bit.
And so fundamentally, if I'm interested in any type of instrument, you are the person I need to come see.
Fretted and stringed primarily. So we do guitars, banjos, mandolins, ukuleles. We used to do the violin family. We don't any longer. And we get the occasional used accordion. We do dulcimers, auto harps, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Folk instruments that most people don't know anything about.
And so I think about when you say 1972 and 1980s, and I think today, 2024, and they didn't have email in 1972.
They didn't have, they said they didn't have a calculator when they first opened, and we sold a pick, which is, at the time, a penny or something like that. But it's the kind of thing where like passion breeds success. And they were really passionate about getting good instruments to their friends and their community. So like before the store opened, my dad was finding old instruments and like getting them to the right person. And so like that's kind of how the love of this business started, was just like simply trying to get good instruments into the hands of musicians who can play them.
Would you say, and so I'm going to get into a little bit more of the mechanics of good business practices, right?
Yeah.
And feel free to correct me, but I feel like you can sell instruments, you can sell cups, you can sell signs, but there are some commonalities and some common threads that make a business great, that make a business successful. 1 out of 15,000 applicants, right?
Yes.
And so can you talk about some of those things that maybe you had to learn, whether the hard way or the easy way, that this is what makes my business successful?
The business is largely successful because of the staff and customer pool. Our customers are extremely passionate about playing music and collecting instruments, and so is our staff. And so there's always been a common thread between the person selling and the person buying, or the person wanting information and the person who can give that information. Because we're happy to give information without making a sale. That's what makes the music industry so great, is that you can share knowledge and collaborate without it having to feel like a business transaction. So I would say a lot of our success comes from passion that started with my dad, and then he hired other people who were passionate about the same things.
It sounds like the actual business of it, and not to say this lightly, but it's somewhat of a byproduct of the passion.
I think so. I think you're better at business if you're passionate about what you're doing. And I think about that for like all of my staff, in that there's right person, right seat. And it's the kind of thing where like, if I can put somebody in a position that they're passionate about, they're going to be better at that job or be more success there. And so it's kind of, I'm always looking for the passion from somebody.
Would you say, I kind of have a scenario in my head, or more so some conversations that I've heard, whether in social media, whether just attending other panels, or people are interested in entrepreneurship, whether they're interested in running a business, that oftentimes you have to divorce yourself from the passion from the business in order to have a healthy business. Or sometimes people just go into business for the sake of business and there's no passion there. What is your response to that?
I think that's sad. I think that would not be a happy life. Granted, you can have other passions, and like your business doesn't have to be the only thing you care about. I certainly care about a lot of other things. But you have to like be able to put yourself as that business. And like, I find passion in like the communities that I work with. And so, but I'm not a musician. I'm not a player. I can, but nobody wants to hear that.
We do at the end.
No, it's good thing I left my banjo at home.
I got one. Don't worry about it.
But I would definitely question the motive if there wasn't passion surrounding the business that somebody was trying to grow. But I mean, there are plenty of businesses that are successful that have no, I mean, like, I don't know if people are passionate about building computer parts. I don't know. I know the music industry, and I know that it's naturally in a passionate industry. People are really care about the music that they're playing or learning or researching or making in the moment. I mean, it's just a passionate industry. So I think it's part of what we have to do.
What's hard about business?
All of it.
Because we're talking about the passion, and that's the good part. That's the loving part. We talked about the highs, but
it's the highs that balance out those lows, right? And so like every business, there are people woes, money woes, logistics woes. There are always woes. But it's being able to look at them and figuring out, okay, well, if this is the problem and I'm looking for a solution, is the solution going to bring a new era, or is it going to bring me back to where I was, or are we innovating? There are all sorts of ways to like find a solution to a problem. And so like the woes, I'm back to creativity and the passion of it all, in that you can work through a problem if you're passionate about the subject. And it's easier to do that, I think. So there are parts of my business that are not my general wheelhouse that I have to default to other people. And that's a difficulty. Trust in a business is difficult.
Huge.
You have to be able to accept that other people are going to execute as you would or better. But
I thought that was interesting, as you would or better, because typically I don't think that's what you hear, as you would or better.
Yeah.
I think people have a difficulty trusting because they don't think the person will do that. Do it as you would or better.
Yeah, fair. I'm in the business of trust. I mean, I have 20 employees who have worked for the store for over 20 years. They're before me. They predate me. And so I have to trust that they can do their job better than I could. And I have to make sure that they know I trust them to do that. That's a lot of the success, is trust. Trust and passion, I think, are so far my two go-tos.
And I'm thinking about what I believe is probably something that makes your business stand above the rest is the fact that you just mentioned. You have employees there that have been there for 20 years, who know the business like the back of their hand, that predates you, but they're entrepreneurs and business owners that are coming along with new technologies and new approaches and new people who they don't know and who they may have a difficulty trusting. What would you say to those folks?
You got to try it. And like inevitably there will be moments where it doesn't work out. But I mean, that's true for me too. I still have to hire new employees and try new projects, and sometimes they don't work out. But you have to trust that you're going to learn something from those moments, and that you'll be able to do something in the future differently that would maybe change the outcome. So like I've made hiring mistakes that I'll never live down.
Can you share one? Can you share
Yeah,
one?
I can.
Share one with us. And it doesn't have to be a hiring mistake, but just a mistake. Because I think we hear a lot. I know we're talking about success over lunch, but a part of success is, I don't want to call it a failure, but a mistake.
Yeah. And I think I've made plenty in terms of like, I do one-on-ones with my staff every year. And in the early years, I would like get caught up in what they were saying, and I'd want to argue, and I'd want to, no, you don't mean that, and all of that. And I learned quickly that like it's a mistake to, first of all, ask somebody to come into your office and like tell you about themselves and then argue with them about it. It's a mistake. Don't do it. But now these one-on-ones are extremely successful. I glean a lot of good information. It's a really good rapport, And that's how we build our strategic plans in the end of the year. So what started as like a fumble kind of project became really, really instrumental, no pun intended, for my business. So that's a mistake.
You don't have to tell all your mistakes.
Yeah,
That's
fair.
fine.
That's fair.
And as I'm continuing this conversation with you, if you all have any questions that you have, feel free to, I don't know if there's a piece of paper that's going around, or if you just want to raise your hand or something like that. That's something we can do. Oh, there's a mic. So just begin to think about the questions you have. And so the other thing I think about your this business that you have, I just keep thinking about since 1972, right? And so weathering a lot of storms.
So many.
Storms that are completely out of your control. Most recently, everything from the pandemic to inflation to the housing, but like just all of these things.
They all affect us.
And so, especially with seemingly, so when I think about instruments, this is me trying to put my business hat on.
Yeah.
I don't know about your customer base, but I feel like some folks, that may be an extracurricular activity if it's not a part of their career.
Yeah, it's a niche.
So it's the first thing that's going to go, right?
Sometimes.
Okay.
So when there was the crisis in 2008, I was just graduating high school. And we didn't feel that for a few years, because when people stopped spending money on going out and doing the thing, you can get a nice instrument and teach yourself how to play it and kind of hermit in. So we are able to weather some of those storms differently. They always do catch up, and we have to be prepared for that. But like, for example, in the pandemic, everybody had to hunker down. And so instrument sales shot up across the board. But that created a supply chain issue. The manufacturers were shut down. It takes 80 hours to build a mandolin. It takes 40 hours to build a guitar. So guess what got thrown out? Mandolins. Sourcing a mandolin was really difficult for a while. So it's the kind of thing where we have to be nimble and responsive to what our customers want. But sometimes our customers don't know what they want until it's right then. But navigating any type of economic woe is a matter of planning and execution. Do you have a plan, and can you execute it? And do you have multiple plans, and are they all able to be executed at the drop of a hat?
So would you say a part of like the success again of your business is having these plans in the event something happens? However, I don't think any of us could have predicted, COVID-19 in 2020.
Not in the way it happened. No, no.
So how do you plan? How do you strategize for the unthinkable?
That's seat of the pants. That was seat of the pants.
Building the plane as you're flying it.
Yeah, but so I guess I'll talk a little bit about the pandemic, which I don't like to do because we're all tired of it. But
you can have another example.
Well,
you don't
no,
like
this
to do.
I think this one's most relevant. Up until I had been running the store starting around 2017. I'd restructured the management team and some more of the staffing stuff. And so I had found myself at the helm with my dad, and we had a leadership team, a management team, and a wonderful staff. And he had a heart attack the week before the hospital shut down. And so as I was picking him up, they were like turning people away, no visitors. And so I had a heads up that something was bad. And it allowed me to make a lot of plans that we didn't do, but it caused me to have the wherewithal to like decide, all right, we're shutting down, we're doing this, we're going to do a skeleton crew, we're going to make everybody stay home, we'll pay them part-time. There are all these things that you have to think about: the employee perspective, the business perspective, the customer perspective. And so like we just took each piece and made a plan and then merged all of that together. And so like sometimes the plan is planning right now, but it's making a plan that's actually executable over a period of time to get you to the point of like end of crisis. And so we were able to scale our business down and maintain operations so that when everything opened up again, we were able to just jump right back in.
What has been the most difficult thing you've had to do for the business to survive?
Oh, this is recorded, right?
You're just talking to me. You're just
right. I'm just talking to you. Having to let people go is probably the hardest thing I've had to do. I don't take it lightly to say you no longer have a livelihood here. And that's hard. It's hard in business to do that. And you have to make some tough decisions when things aren't working out. That, and I think just simply running a business that was my dad's and is now mine. He is a much different person than I am. And he essentially grew up with a lot of our staff. And so there was a large disconnect between the way he runs a business and the way I run a business. And so for a while, we had to navigate both of us being at the helm. And I'm lucky that he's welcomed me in open arms. But he also said to me that like he wanted me to make my own mistakes. And if he didn't jive with what I wanted to do, we had to compromise and figure that out. And that was really tough. Because that's my parent and my business partner. And so in what conversation, what hat is he wearing and what hat am I wearing as the kid? So that's been difficult, but also like really rewarding and humbling at the same time.
And I just want to make sure if there are any questions. Okay, we have a question right here.
So yeah, for Lily, when did you decide I want to do this? Like, and you were confident. Was there a moment where you were interacting with the employees or just in the business, or was it assumed by some people that would be the case? I didn't know.
No.
But what was that point, the tipping point, or something?
Well, so me working at Elderly was a mistake. Not a mistake, but I was studying abroad to finish school, and everybody had a job lined up, and I did not. And I was like, oh my goodness, we fly home in a week, and I don't have a plan. So I called my dad long distance. He was not pleased. And I basically said, like, can I work for you? I don't know what I'm going to do. I swear I'll be a good worker. He told me, don't be an extra body. Like, if you waste everybody's time, I'll be really upset. And so I worked part-time in the warehouse for a year and a half. And I commuted an hour to do so. I made nothing. I don't even know how I did that. But it was like, I fell in love with my coworkers and the customers who would call, and like, we have a wild inventory. I fell in love with all like the little bits and pieces that we have. And I'd been doing that for a year and a half, and I thought, well, maybe I'll just work full time. And so I started working in the phone room in the showroom. I was still working in the warehouse. And then I decided I wanted to be in management and just changed stuff. Like, all right, you're no longer working in the sales department. You're director of sales. You no longer work in receiving. You're in charge of finance. And I did like these big major moves that I had no title to do so with. And that was kind of my like, oh, I'm doing way more than I'm supposed to be. And no one's arguing. Nobody's pushing back. Nobody is saying that's not how we do things. And so it felt like I had all of a sudden this autonomy to like maneuver within the business as myself and also help other people maneuver better within the business. So that was kind of my like, this might be for me forever. Because like the feeling is it's addicting to make people happy or to put them in a good position or to see them succeed. And so like I got really caught up in like watching my staff learn new things and like become even better embedded and, you know, working in the sales department for 10 years and then becoming director of the sales department. It was absolutely empowering to watch other people be empowered. And I couldn't get enough of that. So I decided to stay in charge.
When I think about success as well, something that I hear consistently it's both, and I think it's a double-edged sword.
Mhm.
Simply say don't quit, right? And so the question I have for you, as you've seen your business grow and go through multiple changes, at what point should you, at what point should you quit?
If it's causing you grief, I used to quit things a lot as a kid. I would try an extracurricular and then I was allowed to quit as long as I tried something else. And that was the big lesson, was like, you got to try something else if you're going to quit something. And so I'm always like, if somebody's unhappy at a job, I'm like, you should quit. I don't know. Don't stay if you're unhappy. But it's a double-edged sword, like you said, in that you can't always be chasing happiness. But I think people know when they're not a good fit or when they are waking up and hate having to do what they have to do all day. I would say quit. I'm just not the type of person to tolerate being unhappy like that. And I wouldn't wish that for anyone either.
Because I think about the entrepreneurial journey and even my experiences, like it's tough.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you question if what you are experiencing and what those around you are experiencing is worth it. And so wondering what that linchpin is to say it is worth it or it's not worth it.
Like at the staff level?
I think it's across the board.
Across the
right?
board?
Because based on what you're sharing, I think some people think about business in silos, but when you're actually in it, it's not just the customers. It's not just the staff. Mm-hmm. It's not just the relationships that you're building. It's all of it.
It's all of it. And then all of like the meat and potatoes in between that like make a business run.
Yep.
You know, we have a wonderful reputation for being friendly. Mm-hmm. It takes a lot of back end work to be friendly and knowledgeable, just for what it's worth. To be able to answer all of the questions mm-hmm. timely, efficiently, accurately, with a smile, without losing the customer's attention span, takes a lot.
It's the art. And
I just want
to highlight that it takes, I don't think people make that connection. Like it takes work to be friendly. It takes a lot of work.
It does. Because you're putting on a face.
Yeah.
And my job is to put on a face. That's the CEO's job at this point, is to maintain that culture so that everybody else maintains that culture. But it's a lot of hard work to be on for a living. And so at Elderly, we have all of everything is in-house. Mm-hmm. So our marketing team, warehouse, purchasing, everybody's in the same building. And not everybody has to have on all the time. They don't have to be presentable or presenting at all points. And so I have to be more careful with my sales team than the rest of the business, in that they can get burnt out really quickly. Mm-hmm. Don't get me wrong, all of the other jobs are very difficult. Everybody has their own difficulty mm-hmm. levels, but I think it's always difficult to just be on all the time, and it's easy to lose yourself there. And so I have to be careful with that.
Yeah.
20 years, 20 employees that you still have on your staff, and you're looking at almost every industry in the world is having trouble with turnover, keeping good talent. What would you attribute that to with your organization?
I think it's the culture. We have a strong culture of helping each other and supporting one another. We have core values that I guess would sum it up: community driven, knowledgeable, authentic, enthusiastic, resilient, and results oriented. I think it allows people to be themselves within a job and continue to be passionate about their hobby. And so it's a sweet spot of musicians' haven kind of thing. And that's not to say we don't have turnover. It's just not as bad as it everywhere else, it seems. But that's, again, part of our industry. The music industry has a lot of long-time players, and especially in the retail part of things, there are other, I guess I'll call them competitors. That's weird. We have friends in the industry who have the same staff base that they've had my whole life. They're much smaller than we are, but I have employees who've worked for me for 5-7 years, and we talk about our lifetime at Elderly together, and we're planning for a lifetime together. And I think that's part of it too, is that I'm young enough that they're able to believe in a future with Elderly. And I think that was the same for my dad. He was 25 when he started the store. And so there's always been this culture of like, what about the future? And we'll all be here in the future, and we'll be doing this passionate work in the future. And I think that breeds wanting to stay.
So now I have a follow-up as we talk about the future. And you said, a lot of those employees work with your father.
Mm-hmm.
What does he pass the torch to you, right? What does that look like for those 20? How do you sustain your organization knowing that you're going to have them pass the torch at some point in time?
Succession is hard. If, as business owners, entrepreneurs, if you haven't thought about succession, you should. We were lucky to do a succession with my dad alive, and we were able to show how that worked with all of our staff. So him and I collaborating and talking to one another and being able to feed off of each other's passion taught the managers how to do that with their assistant managers and their leads. And as of right now, we're doing a lot of movement. We're promoting from within. A lot of my sales department is going to purchasing, marketing, photography, just other places in the building. And we are in the process of what do you know that you need to pass down, and what needs to be talked about before that transition. So we focus pretty heavily on knowledge and passing knowledge on, and making sure that, like, even if it is a silo, somebody else understands the general process so that it's not all falling on one person.
When we think about, you talked about succession, and you also talked about looking towards the future. I think AI is a big part of the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
You took a deep breath, because I'm like, AI and instruments, it's two different, not to say it's two different worlds, but
it is.
But it's going to impact your business somehow.
Sure has.
In some way. And so I'm just curious about, how are you planning? You said plan for I'm taking my own notes.
Yeah. So I like that. I appreciate you.
So how are you planning for that? And I just want to add a little bit of, I'll say a note to consider as you're answering this question, because I believe some businesses don't do well, or they don't respond to changes, is because they push back, and they may just ignore that what's coming.
So we have done that in the past with technology. We had a website go up in 1996, and it stayed until 2016.
Ooh, baby.
And it was outdated and
Wow.
patched up, and we are lucky we were able to maintain that. So AI, we're talking Chat GPT and all of these. On the one hand, it is very nerve-wracking to know that AI can write a song and it sounds good, and you don't need to hire a band, you don't need to have studio time, you don't need to hire a producer, you don't need to do the engineering. You've eliminated 20 people with one song. However, in retail, there's always an ability to de-hassle the employee by giving them the tool of AI. So what we've been doing is using AI for captions, product descriptions, but AI can't write that by itself. It has to have a human touch or it's wrong. It's just wrong. Especially in the vintage music instrument world, you can't be wrong when you're talking about these models and the different specs and appointments on it. So we use it to de-hassle the employee. So the appraisers can put a photo in ChatGPT and it will give them basic information. So you've eliminated 10 minutes of research, that kind of thing. That adds up because they're appraising, 50 instruments a day if they can. So I find it to be a de-hassler. I don't want to replace people with AI. I'm sure I could. I'm not going to look into it. That's not part of the plan. The future of elderly instruments is people-oriented and people-driven. And so I have to be cautious with AI and make sure that I know what's happening, but that I have to stay focused.
And I just wanted to check in on time about how we're doing. So the other question that I have for you is about just simple wisdom, right? What nuggets of wisdom do you have to business owners across the board, whether you just started your business yesterday or you've been in it for 5, 11, 15, 20 years? Is there something specifically that someone gave you that has helped you maintain and has helped see you through?
I don't know where I learned it, but it's been like a motto for a really long time, and it's do what's right, not what's easy. And I think about it a lot, and I kind of run most of my decisions through that lens. And I think it could apply in almost any scenario. So I'll give that nugget of wisdom. Do what's right, not what's easy.
It reminds me, so my background obviously is in news and journalism.
Yes.
And my news director at the time, he said, you're going to be making a lot of decisions about what goes across, 20,000. And he said, whatever decision you make, if you're okay with it being on the front page of the New York Times the next day, make it. I was like, okay. And
I like that.
Because it gave you a different perspective about the decisions you make in your moral compass, or which I think speaks to what you're speaking of. And so I just want to say thank you so much for sharing. So we want to give Lillian a round of applause. And if there's anything that you want to close with or that you want to end with in terms of your entrepreneurial journey and just your experience.
Yeah. I don't know if it's truly relevant, but Elderly opened the door to a lot of community work for me. I've helped organize festivals and camps, and I do a lot of nonprofit work now. Because I'm passionate again about the community. And so if anyone wants to know about all of that stuff, I'm happy to talk about that. But I think once you find a passion, the doors just kind of keep opening, and the hard work doesn't feel like hard work. It feels like, I don't know what it feels like. It doesn't feel like hard work to me, but I'm told I work very hard. So
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
appreciate you.
And thank you all for joining us online.
Thank both of you ladies for coming in today and giving us this wonderful story behind Elderly, Cameo leading a great discussion. And before I let them go, I gotta give Cameo a little nudge. Tell us, Cameo, what has been your most impactful moment as an entrepreneur this year?
Most impactful. So I was not interweave. This was something that, and this, I'm gonna be very transparent. When you said that it takes work to be friendly, if I'm sincere, this is probably one of my most challenging years in entrepreneurship across the board with my nonprofit, with doing Black Girl Day of Play. We had a great turnout, 5,000 people.
I had fun.
I'm glad. But it's been one of the most challenging years because stuff just happens, right?
Yeah.
Stuff just happens. And so I'm grateful for the nugget of it takes work to be friendly.
Mm-hmm.
I believe I'm a friendly person.
That's fine.
But when things get tough, the friendly meter turns down a lot.
Yeah.
And